Hey again. So you've heard me mention the idea of using meaningful and logical file names to help organize your data. But using consistent file names can also streamline or even automate your analysis process, saving you time and energy in the long run. When used consistent guidelines that describe the content, date, or version of a file in its name, you're using file naming conventions. And as we've already discovered, these file naming conventions help us organize, access, process, and analyze our data. So here's some general tips on creating file naming conventions that are both logical and functional. Here are some quick file naming do's. Work out your conventions early to avoid having to spend time redoing it later. Align your file naming with your team, and make sure your file names are meaningful, with references to the project name, creation date, revision version, or any other useful information needed to understand what's in that file. Now there's some other simple things you can do to make sure your file naming conventions are on point. First of all, you want to keep your file names short and sweet. They're supposed to be quick reference points that tell you what's in a file. From earlier videos, we know that we want to include dates and revision numbers in our file names. I recommend formatting it by year, month, and day because that follows the International Date Standard. Different countries have different date conventions, so keep that in mind. And when you include revision numbers in a file name, lead with a 0 so that if you run into double digits of revisions, it's already built into your conventions. And another good rule is to use hyphens, underscores, or capitalized letters instead of using spaces. Spaces and special characters might not be recognized by your software. Plus, avoiding spaces definitely makes it easier to work in SQL. And my last bit of advice: create a text file that lays out all your naming conventions on a project. This is really helpful if someone new joins your team, or if you just need a quick reminder while you're working on something. We talked about this earlier when we covered metadata, which is data about data. It helps explain what data there is and how it's being organized. When you use consistent, meaningful file naming conventions throughout your project, your data will be easy to find and use, and you can save yourself time too. Up next, we'll keep looking at spreadsheets, and we'll talk about security features and how you can use them to protect your data now that it's organized. See you there.